So, I'm an Air Force veteran. I first came to Pima County July 4th, 1984. I love telling that story. It's such a perfect day to come out here. And I remember as an 18-year-old airman, I was an electrician on the A-10. One of the first jobs I was given by my shop chief was to go out and fix a plane out on the flight line. I was born and raised in East Tennessee, so wasn't quite used to the heat here in July. But he told me, go ahead and grab some rags and go out there and climb on the back of that plane and do this job. And me being the smart 18-year-old I was, I thought to myself, well, I'm not really that messy. I don't think I need these rags. So I went on out there and knelt down on the back of that plane in the full sun, and I found out why my shop chief had told me to bring some rags to kneel down. And I popped the panel off that plane that I needed to work on, and I'm sure most of us in here remember the game Operation. Well, that's the game I played to get to the connector I needed to take off all the way around. So in many ways, I'm not different than a lot of 18-year-olds when they join the military, but I learned a lot quick and really appreciated it. I spent 4 years active duty in the Air Force, 3 years in the Guard here in Tucson, working on A-10s and F-16s. I've spent over 30 years in technology, and I frequently say a lifetime of solving problems, because in technology, many times we have what we call bugs in our software. And if you've used any kind of software, you've all, I'm sure, encountered it. So my career has largely been spent helping change programs to fix those types of bugs and finding better ways to do things, which is a skill we really need here in the county supervisors. I've got 4 college degrees, a master's, a bachelor's, and 2 associate's degrees. And I'm happy to report I paid back my student loan myself. It took me 10 years, but it was no big deal. I got it done.
Good for you.
And my daughter went to talk to an organization a few years back about becoming a nurse, medical assistant. And she asked what I thought about it. I said, well, how much does it cost? What's their graduation rate look like? And what's their job placement rate look like? And she's like, oh, she asked me, would you get on the phone and talk to them? I said, absolutely. And got on the phone with the lady representing the school and asked her those questions. And she's like, oh, those are good questions. I don't know. So I told my daughter, I think you best keep looking. And today, that daughter, Brianna, is in her first run for the school board, and Flowing Wells beat a 20-year incumbent her very first time. So she's serving on the school board. With 30 years of technology experience, currently I've been 4 years at the company that I represent now. I'm the Director of Business Development and Client Success at a small company downtown Tucson that serves the law enforcement community. We have a piece of software that helps law enforcement investigators organize, connect the dots, and hopefully solve crimes. It's being used in drug cases, in human trafficking cases, and any kind of cases like that. A lot of times, law enforcement's relegated to using spreadsheets to store information, and so we're raising it up a notch. I'm also a realtor that leads a real estate team, oddly enough called the Backer Team. And in 2021, I was recognized as the best mentor in the state of Arizona for EXP, the company that I work for, helping new agents get started in real estate. When I got started in real estate, my broker said, there's a desk, go figure it out. And it took some time, but now I help new agents get off to a better start. I spent 10 years at IBM working with law enforcement intelligence analysts, again, doing link analysis to make sense of large amounts of data, help fight terrorism, find fraud, waste, and abuse. On the worldwide team, I was honored to travel 5 times to London, went to Sao Paulo, Brazil, Seoul, South Korea. I looked at a North Korean looking back at me over the DMZ there, and it was great to be there. just before the year 2000, I was leading a team which developed a county treasurer system for Pinal County, and that system ended up being used in a quarter of the counties in the state. So, you know, the way taxes are collected and distributed and tax lien sales are conducted, of course I had to fully understand all that to be able to write that system. And I think it's a meaningful skill nowadays to have looking at joining the Board of Supervisors. I currently serve as the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission in the town of Sahuarita. I was unanimously elected to that position when the previous chair passed from COVID. And previously I served as a Board of Adjustments Commissioner for Supervisor Christie for District 4. Now, I used to be in Supervisor District 4, but with the redistricting and stuff, they moved me over, along with several others, to District 2. With a show of hands, who in here believes or knows that they're in District 2 for Supervisor? Okay, well, be sure and tell your friends. I wanted to give an example of how I approach problems, because God knows Pima County's full of problems, and those of us who have been around for a while see that things aren't getting better, they're actually getting worse. So many years ago, I was contacted by the director of claims for a well-known health insurance company. She called me in and I said, "How can I help you?" She said that we are battling a problem and nobody can understand it. We get in claims, we track the progress of our claims adjudicators, which take them from a claim to a paid claim, you know, when they're fully worked. And she says that the claims adjudicators are working the claims, but the inventory is not going down. They keep getting further and further behind. And I asked her, "Have you talked to your IT department?" And she said yes, and they say they can't figure it out, that there's no solution. And so I told her I would help her out. The approach that I take to problems is first listening. I frequently say, God give us 2 ears and 1 mouth, therefore we should listen twice as much as we speak. So I sat down in more detail and talked to the lady who brought me in. I didn't want to burn bridges or make an enemy out of the IT department, so I went and sat down with the director of IT and explained that I was hired by the director of claims, but I saw it as me being there to help everyone, including him, and didn't want to step on his toes. And I wanted to learn what they had done, what they had figured out, and take it from there. They hadn't done very much. They just said there was no way to fix it. Next, I wanted to go and see firsthand the people that were doing the work and talk to them and get their opinions. And I watched them adjudicate their claims. And during the time I was watching, I noticed this one lady pulled up a claim. She stared at it for a second, and then she closed it. And then she had a little piece of paper on the side, and she made a tick mark. And I said, "Excuse me, what just happened here?" She said, "Well, I opened up that claim, found out that there's a lot of work still needing to be done, and I decided to move on to the next one." Okay, what was the tick mark? "Oh, that's a worked claim." So I told her, "I thought you're only supposed to tick that when a claim is done." "Oh no, we tick them whenever we open one, whether we do anything or not." And I went back to the claims director and told her what I had found, and she's like, "Yeah, there's no systematic way to do that, so we just have to rely on the individual claims adjudicators to keep track of their production." And I said, "Well, let me ponder on this a little bit." And I came back and found that there was a systematic way to do it, and I wanted to do a small pilot to make sure it was going to work the way I thought it would work, and it did. And the claims adjudicators weren't real happy because they only got credit for the ones they actually worked going forward. But I'm happy to report, out of the 600,000 claims they had built up, in 3 months they were down to 300,000 claims. And it's not that I'm incredibly smart. As a matter of fact, I don't ever want to be in the room where I'm the smartest guy there. That's a problem. So, but they implemented that. I did it without burning bridges with the IT department, and I listened to the people. And I think if you take that similar approach across the board, everyone's going to come out ahead. So a few of you may have heard of Supervisor Hines. Okay, obviously you have. Back in early March, I learned that, he's got a problem showing up for meetings. Even when he's in the building, the admin building, he doesn't want to be in the boardroom. And to hear him explain it, was concerned about COVID. Well, then you may have seen the meeting he participated in remotely where he was on a cruise ship. Now, in talking about COVID, I think all of us have heard that, the cruise ship's a bad petri dish to be in when it comes to COVID, but it wasn't so big a petri dish that he didn't want to go on his cruise. And then there's some other shenanigans where a young, perhaps adult male, appeared in the back of his video feed during a live supervisor meeting. And I've always thought if you're not doing anything wrong, don't hide it. Well, his screen went black. So he has 3 full-time jobs, and it was interviewed by, I think, an organization, a gay magazine named The Advocate, and he explained that I've got 3 full-time jobs. I would have thought I got a little credit for showing up remotely while I'm on my cruise.
Nope.
And so the video of what I told him during the supervisor meetings on my website, backbacker.org, and I stood before him and I said that, based on your words and your actions, you don't value this job, and you've got too many jobs. And I said, I've got great news though. I'm here to help. I've followed the paperwork. I'm challenging you for your seat. And it remains to be seen whether or not he's going to run for re-election or not. I've been told that he has higher aspirations of failure in higher positions. God help us. I think he's already reached that level where he's incompetent. So why should he go beyond that? So also, Supervisor Hines called the unvaccinated murderers and children typhoid Marys. He doesn't value the opinions of the people. He doesn't believe there should be a call to the audience at all. And as you might already be aware, they've already limited down the time to 1 hour. And if there's more than 20 people, they limit the time from 3 minutes down to 2. So they're throttling down the feedback from the people they report to be serving. And as a supervisor, those people work for us, not the other way around. And they need to listen. They won't always agree, but they at least need to listen. And if someone is afraid of defending their position in the form of a debate, that tells you the world, because their position is so weak and they know it. Recently, when the sheriff was in there to talk to him about being over budget, Hines made the suggestion that we could release prisoners out of the jail to reduce the staffing and save money. Well, the sacred duty of government, in my mind, is the protection of her citizens. We've seen it on the national level. We're now seeing it here. And we have to look no further than California to see what's going to happen if they're allowed to continue the way they are. There's been talk of the 15-minute city where they're talking about taking away lanes of traffic through town to encourage us to walk and bike and stuff like that. Well, I live a little distance away down in Sahuarita, so that doesn't work for me. And they want us to take public transportation. Well, talking about a petri dish, they're giving free transportation to people around town. Many of them could be, on fentanyl, could have mental issues, and it could potentially be dangerous. So they need to think of a better way to do that. And Grijalva doesn't want to hear dissenting opinions. She wasn't fond of Supervisor Christie, trying to exercise a point of privilege in which he was well within his right to do, because she doesn't want to hear any dissenting opinions. They want to show up for the board meetings and it'd just be a rubber stamp. Einstein once said, question everything. That's what our supervisors need to be doing, is questioning everything. You should be using the time prior to the meeting to learn all you can learn about the things that are going to be voted on, come up with the questions that need to be asked, and make informed decisions, not just follow the path. Now, the reality of winning this race. In Supervisor District 2, there's about 45,000 Democrats, about 33,000 independents, and only 23,000 Republicans. So we see this pattern across the state, across the country, that independents, you cannot win a general election without winning the majority of the independents. And I believe that my approach to communication, where I fall back on the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, you know, you can bring somebody over to your way of thinking easier. It's never easy, but easier if you don't figuratively pin them into a corner and hit them over the head with it. Try to use some finesse. Try to use the things that are in that book that help bring them along in a more tactful way. So don't confuse my approach to communicating with people of the other party or people that are independents with my lack of passion. I'm a conservative, lifelong conservative, faith, family, and freedom. And back in the first grade, when I recognized, the difference between the two parties, is a story I frequently tell. We were going in to do a mock election for the Nixon election. And my teacher in first grade was Mrs. Love, and I looked up, like I continue to do with everybody. I said, "Excuse me, Mrs. Love, what's the difference between a Republican and a Democrat?" And she said, "Oh, the Republicans are the ones with money." I said, "Okay, well, I could like that, but now we know that it's really the Democrats with all the money, including ours." But as I stepped into the room, I noticed the Democrats on their table, they were giving away candy. The Republicans weren't. And even at that young age, I knew something was wrong. So I went the other way. So there's a lot of issues in Pima County. I believe a lack of transparency above all else. The way they send out the agendas and the addendums so close to the meeting time, it doesn't give adequate time for those to be vetted out completely and come up with a list of questions that need to be done. Also, there's master agreements where they're rubber stamped and the money just flows fast and wild, and the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, where they give charities our tax dollars. Well, I don't need them to use my tax dollars to support charities. We can do that ourselves. And if we do it ourselves, we hold their feet to the fire and there's accountability to it. When the government gets in the middle of it, there's no accountability, it's just gamesmanship. So, another thing is, you frequently hear on the news that, the tax rate this year went down. And the people who don't pay close attention don't understand that just because your tax rate goes down, that doesn't mean your tax bill is going to go down. In fact, with the increase in values that we've seen over the last several years, the tax bills went up. Just 2, maybe 3 years ago, we were at $1.2 billion budget for Pima County. This year, it's $1.9 billion. That kind of stuff is not sustainable. It needs to stop. The way our tax dollars are being spent. Worldview. I was down at an event in Green Valley with Chuck Huckleberry, and he probably could kick himself for using this verbiage. Someone there asked him about certificates of participation. Where they mortgage county buildings and use the money for whatever they want without voter approval. His definition, his answer to the question was, that's how we launder the money. I was blown away that he would use that phrase, but I used it against him. Banner Health got effectively a free lease to the old Keno Hospital. I was present when years ago, they came forward and wanted to sublet some of the space. Well, if you would think if they're getting it for free or near free, who gets the money if they sublease that? They thought they should keep it. I thought it should go back to the taxpayers, because if they're not paying for it, why should they get anything? And so I turned to Chuck Huckleberry, and I'm happy to say he got red-faced when I said this. I said, you know, Administrator Huckleberry, is this another situation where this is how you launder the money? And Elias said, hey, you know, and wasn't happy with the way I did that, but it needed to be said. The bowling alley up on Miracle Mile.
Oh, yeah.
They had to have that bowling alley. And remember, I'm a realtor. Why would you pay more than the appraised value of a building using county taxpayer funds? Well, that's what they did. And not only did they pay more than the appraised value, they found out after the fact. And when I represent a client, we do inspections before they buy something. They magically found out that there was asbestos in it after they bought it, and had to remediate that on our dime. And then they let the previous owner keep it, I think, for a year or so. And in the end, they let him take the bowling alley out of it, the bowling lanes, the wood and stuff, because there was a lot of value there. Well, we paid for it with those lanes in there. And then how long did they let it set before they tore it down? And what once was like a $4 million project, I think it's up around $30 million now. And the size of the building's smaller than they were first talking about. And God bless Allie Miller. She's, you know, in her time in office, she called these types of shenanigans out. And although I have ran twice for county supervisor, both times, once when it was an open seat and once with Steve Christie being an incumbent. Steve Christie's doing an awesome job now, really holding the feet to the fire. And when I ran against him, we had policy differences. Nothing I did during the primary damaged him in any way in the general. And I believe that's the way it should be. I believe in the primary process. I want as many people to run as can run and bring forth the ideas and debate those ideas and moves forward. And when he beat me in the primary, I did get 35% of the vote, spending 10% of the money. So I kind of took that as a success in many ways. But I endorsed him and said, absolutely, I'm behind you, and voted for him. My family voted for him. All the multitudes of people who come to me, I told them to go vote for him. And that's the way our party should work. And then the roads. Prop 463, probably several of us in here helped fight against that. They said, if we don't pass this, the roads will never be fixed. Now they're saying they're fixing roads. Where's that money coming from? But they're still not using the HERF and VLT. I'm fortunate to live in Sahuarita. We use the HERF and VLT to maintain our roads. So I can tell when I cross into the county from the city, because it's like surfboard or washing board type thing, right? So it can be done. We've proved it. But it's just another way for them to not have the transparency that's needed to get the job done. And one other thing about transparency, they need to have board of supervisor meetings in the evening, at least part of the time, because I'm still working age, still working, and many other people are as well. We want to have as much participation as possible. When that was suggested in years past, Huckleberry said, well, it's going to cost too much. Well, all those people that sit across the back of the room, the department heads, they're salaried. They don't get paid overtime. They'll work when we want them to work. And if we want to have a meeting once a month or twice a month in the evening, they'll do it. The other issue Huckleberry had, which I think was a rare moment of honesty, was that it wasn't safe downtown at night. Well, that's a problem that needs to be fixed even if we're not having board of supervisor meetings at night. And the budgeting process, the way they use vacancies to kind of be a slush fund, that needs to stop. This year, some departments put an inflation line item. I don't understand why they would, because if you listen to the national news, President Biden says there is no inflation. So why would they have to have that line item? And then Obviously, crime, immigration, homelessness, those are complex problems with complex solutions. People are homeless for a number of reasons, but we do have fentanyl tourism coming here because the price of the fentanyl is so cheap, and they know the laws won't be enforced, and we need to clean all this up. And you know that as well as I do. And so, I think I'm getting close to time here, but my website is backbacker.org. It's got some stuff on there, videos, the video of me announcing my candidacy before the Board of Supervisors. And it kind of worked out well because Hines was not there, but he was remoting in video. So you see the picture of his grinning face as I'm telling him I'm challenging him, and he doesn't make any expression until I'm basically done, and it's kind of a smirk. So we'll see. And then I've got another website project that I've developed called ConnectNeighbors.com. What ConnectNeighbors.com does is, in this world we live in, many times neighbors don't know their neighbors. They don't know what looks right. They don't know what normal is. And if you don't know what that is, you can't possibly know what bad or wrong looks like. So those websites are free websites for neighborhoods across the Tucson metro area and beyond. I've got 330 of them right now, and I've got it set up to where my campaign ad is displayed on every one of those pages across all 330 Pima County neighborhoods and growing. And I want to use technology to make it possible to more effectively communicate with the voters, to have them tell me, how do you prefer to be communicated with, and not just vote on something and move on, but make sure everyone knows why I'm voting, what I'm voting, and to get their feedback, just like I do when I've solved problems for 30 years. So I appreciate the time today. I've enjoyed learning more. Lifelong learner, that's not going to stop. And thanks for sharing, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.